the most important thing you can do is be human with your customers, right? And that aggravation that might happen because they're not finding the answer that they need or something's not working, you still have that ability to talk to them one to one. And you can do that with video.
Welcome to Unexpected Journey, the show where each week top professionals share work wisdom and life lessons about their careers and what they have learned about human experience in the workplace. I'm your host, Ann Bibb. In today's episode, Charles Kerr-Gravatt is the CMO of Appeasy. Previously, he was head of growth at Yak and director of international marketing at Klaxoon. He's an advocate for remote work and in 2015 dropped everything to move from New York City to Brittany, France with his family. Join us today as we take that unexpected journey with him and talk about all things customer experience. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe and leave your comments below. Now let's get started. So Charles, welcome to the show.
Yeah, it's so great to be here. And I think maybe congratulations are in order. Did I just see you as a remote work influencer that was just announced recently?
Yeah, so that's it's kind of exciting. I've been on the CX influencer and the remote influencer this quarter, so kind of hitting both angles now.
I should be interviewing you.
It's one of those wild things. Both of them reached out, and I'm like, what is going on?
Well deserved.
Thank you, and I'm excited to hear what's going on with you. Like I said, we've known each other a long time.
Yeah.
We met at a remote conference, shocking of all things,
Hmm.
and I've watched you kind of move through and become this amazing CMO of different organizations. So, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about your background and how you got here?
Yeah, so great to be here. So I am the CMO of Appeasy. We're a leader in real-time communication, video communication for customer service. We're in 40 countries right now. We've all had those moments where we have a customer experience moment that's not ideal, something that we bought, something that we got doesn't work, and we're kind of frustrated. And what usually happens is you're speaking to a bot or you're chatting in Facebook or Twitter or some other way. Maybe you get on the phone call and the representative can't help you because they can't see what you see. Peasy, very simply, what happens is you get a link and you're connected with the person and they see what you see. And you have this great human moment where you're actually solving the problem of the person. And that's so important nowadays, right? AI is everywhere. Things are going very fast, but we still need human experiences in the customer experience. And that's a moment that's extremely important for people because we're seeing that 50% of people are saying they're going to change the customer, the company that they bought from if they have a bad customer experience. So what we're seeing is when people use our solution, they're cutting their time to resolution by 50%. Customer satisfaction rises by 95%. And what's super important is that people don't have to come to your house anymore to fix that machine, which happens a lot. And we're seeing a reduction of 40% of technicians traveling to your house for the cable box, the washing machine, whatever that is, because they can help you right away. So that's we're doing that in 40 countries right now.
So I love the thought that you're putting the human in the experience
Totally.
because there's so many people that are talking right now about taking the human out of by
Yeah.
using more AI, which I'm a fan. I'm a fan of it, right?
Yes, we all
There's
are.
so there's so many things that you can be more efficient,
Hmm.
but there are so many and there are a lot of people that are afraid of it right now. They're like, it's gonna take my job. This is a great example of it's not taking all the jobs.
Yeah. So it's funny because you and I met, I think, like before the pandemic almost, right? And
Way
we were
before, yep.
talking about remote work. And imagine what, like, sort of this crazy time period, which wasn't very long. And it might have been wild for people to say, hey, we're going to be doing videos with each other all the time. And that's how we're going to get to know each other. And now we're saying, well, AI is going to do everything. You'll never talk to a human again. And the reality is, consumers have changed a lot in this time, right? They're much more comfortable with certain things and their expectations have changed. And one of their expectations is well, they don't want to have a lot of problems. Number one, great customer experience is something that people have an expectation, but they're also expecting to be able to reach you on the channel that they prefer, right? This omni-channel experience, which is new for companies, right? It's kind of like, whoa, like I'm not expecting this message from here, and I'm supposed to give the exact same service to you on that place. And then also self-service, right? Like people want some self-service, but the end of the day, the most important thing you can do is be human with your customers, right? And that aggravation that might happen because they're not finding the answer that they need or something's not working, you still have that ability to talk to them one to one, and you can do that with video. So that's a personalization and making that experience more human if you can, right? If maybe that's only 5 or 10% of your interactions with your customer, will guarantee customer loyalty for a very long time. If you fail at that, well, you probably they won't be your customer very long.
I was just reading an article yesterday, I think, about how customers are less patient, they're more frustrated, they're less willing to uh, put up with any errors and frustrations.
Mm,
And what you're talking about and putting the video
yeah.
in customer service, there's something to be said about being able to see facial expressions and being
Mhm.
able to see body language. And to your point, if I'm utilizing that video, say I'm on a call with somebody trying to fix something, uh, something on my refrigerator or something along
Yeah.
those lines, and I can't explain what is wrong because that's not my thing.
Yeah, I
I'm
don't have
not
the
a
right
refrigerator
jargon. Yeah.
repairman, but if I have the video up, I
Mhm.
can show that person that issue, and
Yeah,
they can actually walk me through or tell me what's wrong or show me where the serial number is, and
totally.
I can pull that information. It reduces the stress, the frustration, the anxiety of the consumer.
Yes. I think when we talk about customer journeys, we do want to create personalized human moments. We do want to make things simple. And it might be like, hey, all the info's here. Here's like a how-to video or whatever that is. And that's the expectation. But in that customer journey, we need to allow, especially with AI being everywhere, we do need to allow our customers to reach on us very on a human level, and that's so important. And this happens in a multitude of ways. We talked about the pandemic, and the world of work has changed and remote work, and there's something that companies have had to think about their customer journeys in a certain way and their customer experiences in a certain way, but they also have had to think about their employee experience in another way, and I think these are
Oh,
intertwined.
Charles, you're like just preaching to me. This isn't like,
Yeah,
I love that.
this is
Yes.
why we get along. Um, so those two things, when we talk about being more customer centric, but also more employee centric, those go together. And I think empathy plays a huge part in this, where companies and management are saying, okay, what does my customer expect? What does my customer need? Do I really know my customer? And in the same way that they're doing that, they have to do that with their employees, right? Like what is now my employees are expecting? Because if you get that part wrong, you'll get the customer experience part wrong as well. You have to figure that out. Like, where are my people working? How are they working? Are they actually trained to do this, right? Because we're saying, I've been maybe doing this for 5 years and over the phone or over a chatbot, and maybe the chatbot part will be done by AI, and you need to upskill people and say, hey, you can do this on video, right? These are some of the cues. This is some of the training. People might come to you frustrated, and this is what how you deal with people that are frustrated, right? And that's going to be so significant in creating these special moments with our customers, these one-on-one moments that people come to expect, and they want a solution faster, and that's okay. And I think the empathy part plays into this as well. People, if you admit your mistakes, hey, sorry about that, that wasn't expected, but I'm here to help you, and I'm a human. People, that anxiety level, that anger level kind of comes down a notch, saying, hey, this is the face to this brand that I love, and they've actually helped me really well. And that's where you see these kind of reviews on websites and people going on social media and say, I love this brand. I've been buying them for 50 years or 20 years or 5 years because they consistently are doing things the right way. And I think what we will see is that companies that have the employee experience and the customer experience kind of interlinked are the ones that will be successful.
talking about how during the pandemic, so many of people, I mean, I've worked remotely for 20 plus years, you've worked remotely for a long time. Uh, but being honest here, I've been on video camera more since 2020 than
Yeah.
I had since prior, right? And I started working remotely in the
Yeah.
1990s.
Hmm.
So that speaks volumes to say in the prior 20 years, I had not used the video camera as much as
Yeah.
I have in the last 3 years.
Hmm.
So knowing that and recognizing that fatigue from being on video and being on camera is actually a real thing, has that impacted the employees that have started using this product, or have you seen an impact from that uh, in any way, shape, or form? And if so, how do you work with that? How do you help them to be successful? Because as you said, employee experience does filter down to customer experience.
Hmm. Totally. So e- ev- we have to take time. We have to take pause and realize these interactions, and they start maybe at work, right?
Mhm.
We're most organizations have a very meeting centric culture.
Oh
Uh,
my gosh,
I-
that's a whole other issue.
yeah, it's a meeting centric culture based on bad collaboration and bad communication habits, right? And how people share information generally. And I've done a lot of studies on this, and I've experienced remote work since 2015 before anyone else was doing it. So I kind of knew what proximity bias was before that anyone else was talking about it. And the reality is, we have a lot of bad habits kind of that seep into our work. And this is how, if you ask why do you do this way, most managers or directors or CEOs were like, this is how we've always done
How
this,
we've
right?
always done it.
And this and doing some of these studies, well, it was 50% of people saying that they have too many meetings, right? And 35% said they felt most of those were pointless, right? So you're starting off, you haven't done anything yet, you haven't helped a customer, you haven't really solved anything, and you look at your kind of Monday morning, look at your calendar, and you're like, wow, I'm already booked up a lot, right? And this is kind of your attention, your time, like what you have to take time to do work. And then there's this added element, well, we've said our focus is being more customer centric, and those are meetings too, right? Every time that you might be having a customer call, if you're a customer success manager, if you're a customer support manager, or whoever that might be, those are mini meetings, right? And science shows that you kind of need breaks after these meetings, right? This culture of the back to back to back, that's terrible. That's the worst thing you could do, right? You maybe need to get up, go for a walk, come back, have 15 minutes to clear your head. Or you'll have something that's called meeting recovery syndrome, which basically means that you're in another meeting, but you're still thinking about the last meeting. And if it went badly, and remember what I said was, a lot of times they're calling you, they're not very happy. You're doing this one-on-one with someone who has a problem. Their cable box is out, they have no Wi-Fi, and they have this super important meeting in an hour. They need this to work now. You better fix it, right? So if you're having a lot of these interactions, be it a business meeting where it's tense or a customer support call that's tense, you need that extra time slot to kind of like let that seep out. And we're not doing that right now. We're not doing that at work, and we're not doing that for customer support teams. So what do we see since the pandemic? Sort of employee churn in these sectors have gone through the roof. They're like over 80%, and people don't understand why. Well, the technology has changed, the expectations has changed, but we really has the training kept up? Have we given people kind of the time in their day to work through this stuff to avoid meeting recovery syndrome? I'm not so sure.
So, understanding that this is a video based business, right? When you talk about utilizing this in customer support, how do you measure the success of
Mhm.
a video based customer service strategy?
Yeah, I think it's always important to think about ROI, whenever you in whatever you do. right? And I think it's a lot easier to keep a customer that you have than to find a new one. So the ultimate goal is like, what are customer expectations? And people will, if some of the best team, we work with big companies. Okay, so companies that are listed on exchanges, they have 10,000 employees. They're doing this really well, right? They have a lot of data and things like that. So they'll talk to you about, NPS scores, time to resolution. They'll do all that stuff. And I think what you need to do is, what am I trying to accomplish? And a lot of what you see is, if you're trying to fit certain metrics into when you're doing something else, you'll probably fail, right? And what you want to do is avoid the recurring problem that keeps on coming back. And that's where the frustration continues to grow. So the example very simply would be like, we're going to try to help this person figure this themselves on this self-service sort of Q&A or a FAQ or some video, right? It didn't work out, so it escalates and it continues to escalate. And it's about understanding when you need to plug in that sort of game changer. And I think humans are the game changer in this, right? It's like, when do I need to plug in the human before it gets to critical mode where the person loses it? And that's your kind of strongest point. Save your teams and save your humans to kind of save the day and have that one-on-one experience. And don't put the metrics that you might be judging, right? But I think, we talked about customer success, and we talked about time to resolution, two stats that a lot of our customers share with us about how they're using video in the right way. Those are game changers. And I love the carbon friendly one, which is, I don't have to get into my truck to go service the person. And that's a reduction of 40% of those kind of trips. And that's kind of massive in today's environment.
100%. So, one of the things that you and I have talked about on several different calls is, as you moved into marketing,
Yeah.
and every organization that you're going to, figuring out who your ideal client is.
Mm,
And one of the things that we both, it resonated with both of us, was how many times we talk to people and they don't
mm,
know who their ideal client profile is.
yeah.
So, how do you do that? How do you figure that out? What is your magic secret sauce?
Yeah. I don't, it's kind of funny that this is a recurring thing. I
And it's
think,
like it's annoying that it's a recurring thing.
it has a lot to do. Everyone's smart, right? They're building these amazing products. They're adding these features and all of that, right? But I think people sometimes have to take a step back and really say, hey, who's my ICP? Who's my ideal customer profile? What problem am I solving for them? How am I solving? How does my tool do that? And become obsessive with that. And that's a hard thing, right? Because we've seen all these, startup stories where some devs lock themselves in a room and they code for like hours, and then they come back 3 months later and they've built this product, but they haven't talked to anybody, right? And that's where it's
It's like
super.
Silicon Valley, where they live in a house together, right? Like, but they've not talked to anybody.
Totally. And sometimes you get lucky, right? You experienced the problem yourself and you built something to solve it. And hey, lo and behold, you were right and you got it right. But that's not the case for everybody. And that's also something to think about if you're a bigger company. Uh, and to avoid sometimes challengers, are we taking a step back and thinking about the expectation and the problems that we're solving or our product solves for our customers? And I think that's something that, if you're building a business or you're starting out, or even if you're extremely established, to sometimes take those times and say, okay, am I doing this right? Is this the right problem that I'm solving? And how am I solving it? And who else is solving it a certain way? And that's vital to the success of any company. And I think it's being more focused on the benefits than the features. And a lot of times when you talk to people, they'll just talk about features, right? And not the benefits. So taking time out to say, okay, am I doing this right? Am I thinking about the problem and my customer in the right way? And also talking to people, right? Like going out there, like marketers, a lot of times you'll ask them what they've been doing, and they never have a chat with a customer. It's someone else's job. Like the sales team might be talking to customers, the CSM team might be talking, or support might be talking to customers, and marketing never does that. And even sometimes, CEOs don't do that either, right? They might have done that initially where they were selling the product, and they get away from that. And I think it's kind of healthy to do that too from time to time.
You've mentioned this a few times, feature focus versus benefit focus.
Yeah, you want to do the opposite. Don't be if if you got like 100 features, you probably got a problem.
Like, I'm sitting here as a consumer, if I have too many features, I
Yeah,
get overwhelmed,
sure.
you
But you
know?
probably asked for all those features. Usually what happens is, wow, how the features got in there.
It's
There's some,
because we're like, "Oh, it would be cool if it did
I
this.
need this, I
Oh, it
need
would be cool
that.
if it did this."
It would be great if you had that. This is a very common thing where, there's a ticket somewhere that says the customer asked for this, and it's usually the wrong customer, right? It's not your ICP asking for this. So it's being obsessive about the problem and your customer problem, and less obsessive about the little fancy feature.
But if you're focused on the benefits of
Yes.
what your product can solve and the solution, and you're targeting a narrow ICP, that's the goal.
Mm. And it's in everything you do, right? Once you figure that out, it's in the products you build. That's how you talk about them. That's how you communicate with people. And when you do that, you're doing something right.
Now, does your ICP change?
Could depends on big companies have maybe multiple ICPs.
Mhm. And as you grow from startup to mid-market, it could expand.
Totally. I mean, a lot of times companies get into new markets.
So do you have like an example of a situation where um, you were marketing to the wrong ICP or
Yeah, I think that a lot of so interesting having being bicultural and bilingual, and being a New York City kid that's kind of experienced every culture in the world. That is a huge benefit to kind of communicate with people and understand people and have empathy for diversity and say, okay, well, not everyone's the same, and my way of looking at things might not be right. A lot of times American companies, they're kind of lucky, right? 330 million people. I built a product. It's for America. Bam. The world, hey, world, I'm here. And when you're European, sometimes countries are a lot smaller. Your market's a lot smaller. And there's a lot of them, right? Like if you're in Germany, Spain, or France, and you might build something for the ICP, which is a certain type of person, in a company. The reality is, you might say, well, it's perfect, it's for this person that does this and this type of organization, and we're talking B2B here, but great. But then you don't realize that, like, oh, this is for everybody. But the German market might be very different than the UK in terms of size of companies, expectations, the products they use. And then you go kind of international, you might go to US or you go to Japan, and there's a total different expectation. And we can talk about this in sort of communication, like with remote work. We've seen um, maybe certain cultures have high context or low context ways of communicating, and certain tools, maybe like a chat or something, would work better with people in remote settings that are direct. They're not beating around the bush, but other cultures, they do that. So you kind of have to read into the words. It's not clear, and you lose alignment. And that's the same thing when you're building products, like who you're building it for, how in sort of that geographic market might they be different than where you started your business. And you maybe have to start again, communicate differently, right? It's not a one size fits all. And gosh, that's makes things hard. That's why this is not easy.
it is not easy, that's for sure. All right. So you kind of fed into it, and it was one of the questions I had. I
Uh-huh.
really am intrigued by the fact that you used to be in finance
Mhm.
and landed in marketing. That's
Yeah.
weird, man. Like, how did that happen?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
I know the story of like the 2008, 2009. That was a bad time to be in
yeah,
finance, but like making the flip to marketing.
totally. Yeah, so happy to talk about that. So not weird. I mean, people do find it weird, but I think it shouldn't be weird anymore. I think the way the career arc of any individual nowadays is totally going to change, right? Some people might do something for 5 years and do something totally different for the next 10,
Pivoting careers is
and
like
then
a
go
thing.
back or
Yeah.
whatever. I think we need to forget this mindset of like I learned that in school and that's what I'm going to do until I'm like whatever 65, right?
Normalize the pivot.
Yeah. So I did study marketing in college,
I did
and I
not know
studied,
that.
yeah, international marketing in college, and did have that stint in finance, and it was in around 2015. I was married a woman from Brittany, France, as well. So remember, my folks are from this area, and met a wonderful young lady in New York City that was from that area. We got along, we got married, and we are going to have our first kid. And we had this conversation like a lot of people do. It's like, hey, I'm in the big city, and New York, we love New York, but I don't think we're going to like New York with kids as much. It's expensive, it's a hassle. Let's move elsewhere. So this is like 2015, and I was like, well, you know what? Like, let's pick a mid-size American city that's kind of like growing, like Austin, Denver, San Diego, and all of those have gone crazy since then. But at that time, they were like kind of up and coming and cool, right? This is before the pandemic. And my wife was like, well, why not Brittany, France, where I was born? I've been international for 10 years. She was in China and then the US. I'd like to go back. So I said, okay, clearly, like what I do now, there's no way I can do that if I move there, right? And I said, you know what? I'm in my late 30s. Let's do that. So for people listening, probably don't do that, right? Terrible idea, but maybe not. I think more than anything, something that we can do is believe in ourselves, right? And say, look, I'm ready to take some challenges. I'm ready to fail, no matter your age. But if you're dynamic and you take the time and you believe in yourself, you can really do something that's different. So make this crazy leap. Everyone thought I was nuts. I moved late 30s to France in a village that has like more cows than people. I the total opposite of New York City. And I said, well, if I had moved to Japan, I would have learned Japanese. And so I moved to Brittany, France, and I already speak French. So I said, well, I probably should learn language here. And Brittany's a Celtic region of France. So they have a Celtic language that's similar to Irish and Welsh. And it's called Breton. So I did a 6-month course where all day I had people talking to me in a language that I could not understand. And it's the language of my grandfathers, and my parents spoke it, but you weren't allowed to speak it in school and you were punished for doing so. So the language was lost almost. UNESCO says it's severely endangered. So I do this course for 6 months, late 30s, move from New York to a small village, learning this language. And I can tell you, I had a massive headache every single day. Every single day. And I think there's these neurons firing massively in my mind. But the whole time I was doing stuff. I started this startup contest where I was helping companies go to the US and doing events and all of that, and doing that for free. And what it led to was this amazing positive dynamic in my life where I was meeting all these founders, meeting all these CEOs, meeting all these people. And they were like, what are you doing with your life, man? I said, well, doing some learning Breton language and trying to help people. And they said, well, you need to join us because we love that dynamic attitude that you have. And so this startup contest that I started, it's more than 150 companies that took part. 15 spent a week in New York understanding what it meant to do business in the US. And of my last 3 employers, 2 of them have been through my program. So it's about doing and unexpected journeys. I think this
It
fits
is.
perfectly for you here. That's it, and that's it, and believing in yourself.
So, what would your advice be to somebody that uh, wants to do that, wants to take, not, follow in your footsteps and
Yeah,
move to Brittany, France, but wants to take that pivot, right?
yeah,
Wants to just go in some place that they've never been from a career standpoint.
yeah. So I think one of the things that you have to be curious, and I'm massively. I found the internet amazing, and tools like Twitter. This in this journey of transition, I just want to learn stuff every day, and one of my studies, we realized that it's only 30% of employees learn something each month that pertains to their job. But us as an so that means your company's probably not training you, and you're not doing training. So you have to like prioritize self-training, and you have to be curious. And it's like, what do I want to learn about? And there's so much great information out there, like on Twitter and TikTok and YouTube, and saying like, I have an interest in this. And believe in yourself. And you know what? I'm going to spend the time and learn about this. And pretty soon you'll probably see you're almost an expert more than other people about that subject. And at that point, you could say, what, you know what? I'm going to make that transition and believe in yourself. Everything might not be perfect. Things might be hard sometimes, but if you stay the course and you believe in yourself and you're curious and you give back, you're positive and you try to help others, I think you do that and you'll do all right.
Well, Charles, I just want to thank you for coming on the show today and for sharing your unexpected journey with us and sharing some information about Appeasy. It was quite interesting.
Thank you. It was awesome.
And for everybody else, we appreciate you joining. Charles, why would somebody reach out to you? And how would someone reach out to you?
Yeah, I mean, the why, I don't know. I get a lot of different
I don't
messages.
know why they want me.
I think if you want to talk about remote work or you want to talk about future of work, new ways of working, if you want to talk about customer experience and what we do at Appeasy, I'd be more than happy to chat with you. You can reach me on LinkedIn or on Twitter or any other way you find me online.
And all of those links are below. And for those individuals that are listening, we will also put those in the links for our show there. Thanks for joining, Charles. And thank you, everybody else, for joining. And we will see you again next week on Unexpected Journey. As we wrap the episode up, we would like to take this time to thank you for joining us this week on Unexpected Journey. Our guest information will be linked in the episode description, along with a link to our company website, remoteevolution.com, and our host website, annbib.com. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share on your favorite podcast app and on our YouTube channel so that you never miss an episode and we can continue to bring them to you. Let us know your thoughts on what we discussed in the comments section. And once again, thank you for joining us. We hope to see you again next week for another episode of Unexpected Journey.